The forest was silent. Too silent, the human traveler knew something was wrong. He had been walking for hours, following the broken trail that led deeper into alien ruins. The sun was low, its light bleeding through the twisted trees, making every shadow look alive. His steps were careful, his senses sharp. But still he felt eyes watching him. He carried no heavy weapon, only a small blade and a pack of food. He was not here to fight. He was here to survive, but survival was never easy on this world, especially not when its rulers hated humans. A rustle came from above. Before he could look up, a blur of silver and black dropped from the branches. Claws glimmered, sharp as knives. And a voice filled with venom hissed in his ear. "Move, and I kill you, human." He froze, his heart thundering. The weight on his chest was light but deadly. The figure crouched above him was small, lithe, and graceful like a predator. Her eyes glowed golden in the fading light, and her ears twitched with anger. It was not just any alien. It was one of the feline royal kind, the alien cat princess. He recognized her from the crest carved into the thin metal band across her forehead. A crown not of jewels, but of heritage. And now she was pressing a claw against his throat. "Why? Are you here?" She snarled, her tail whipping behind her. "You dare step on sacred ground. Humans should die for less." Her breath was warm against his face, but her words were cold as death. The human raised his hand slowly, showing no weapon. "I don't want to fight," he said softly. That made her eyes narrow, as if she expected. "Resistance, not calm? You lie. All humans lie," she spat, pressing harder until he felt a sting at his neck. Fear raced through him. But he forced himself to stay steady. If he showed weakness, she would kill him. If he showed anger, she would kill him. The only chance he had was to do the opposite of what she expected. "You can kill me," he whispered, "but then who will carry you out of here?" Her ears flicked, confusion flashing across her fierce expression. She did not expect those words. Her claws trembled slightly, though still at his skin. "I don't need you," she hissed, but her voice was less certain now. He saw the blood. On her arm, hidden under fur, she was wounded. Her movements were fast, but not steady. Even a princess could bleed. "You're hurt," he said calmly. Her eyes widened in anger. And she pressed her claw harder again. "Silence, human. Speak again," and all her words broke when her knee almost buckled for a moment. She leaned heavier against him, and he realized the truth. She had been running, hunted, maybe for days. She had no ally, no friend, only claws to protect herself. But claws could not heal wounds. She needed help, even if her pride hated the thought. The human's mind raced. If he tried to push her off, he would die. If he tried to run, he would die. But if he could reach her pride, her stubbornness, maybe, he could live. "You don't need me," he said carefully, "but you can use me." Her ears flicked again, golden eyes narrowing. "Use you," she repeated, her tone mocking. "Yes," he replied. "Steady. I have food, water, shelter. And two hands that still work. You can throw me away when I'm no use, but until then, I can help." The silence stretched. Her tail swayed slowly. Her claws still near his throat. He felt the weight of her decision pressing down heavier than her body. Would she kill him here, leave him to rot, or spare him for her own survival? Finally, she growled low, the sound vibrating through her chest. "If you betray me, human, I will make you scream before I kill you." She pushed off him in one graceful leap. Landing a few steps away, her stance was strong again, though. He noticed the limp she tried to hide. "Stand," she ordered. Her voice sharp as steel. He rose slowly, his hands still open. She circled him like a predator circling prey. But in her eyes, behind the fury, there was something else: hesitation. She needed him more than she wanted to admit. The human breathed deeply. He had survived the first encounter, but his journey had just begun. The alien princess who had sworn to kill him was now forcing him to walk at her side. And in the dark silence of the forest, he wondered if this was the start of his death or something stranger. The forest grew darker as the sun sank behind the broken hills. The human walked carefully, his steps slow, his eyes always watching the figure ahead. The alien cat princess moved like a shadow, graceful even with her hidden limp. Her tail twitched from side to side, showing her unease. She had not lowered her guard since the first moment they met. Every time he made a sound, her golden eyes flicked toward him, sharp as blades. "You follow too close," she hissed suddenly. Her voice low but full of warning. The human stopped at once, lifting his hands again, showing no weapon. "You told me to walk," he said softly. "I'm only doing what you command." Her ears flicked. Annoyed by the calm tone in his voice, it was as if she wanted him to panic, to fear her, to scream or beg, but he did none of those things. And that unsettled her more than defiance ever could. They reached the edge of a ruined stone wall, cracked with vines and old claw marks. She leaped onto the top with ease, crouching like a predator. Watching him from above, he stayed on the ground, looking up. The fading light caught the blood still seeping through her arm fur. She hid it well, but not well enough. The human knew she was in pain. "You are bleeding," he said again. Steady, her growl echoed through the ruins. "You think me weak?" She snapped, her claws scraping against the stone. "I think you are strong," he replied quickly. Strong enough to survive even with wounds. Her tail lashed behind her. And for a moment, she seemed ready to leap down and strike him. But instead, she stayed crouched, her golden eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Why do you speak like this, human?" she asked coldly. "You should fear me. You should beg for your life, yet you stand there calm." He met her gaze without flinching. "Because fear changes nothing," he said. "And begging never saves anyone." She tilted her head slightly, as if studying him for the first time. Her sharp ears twitched at every sound of the forest, yet her attention stayed on him. Minutes stretched in silence before she spoke again. "You say you will help me," she muttered, almost to herself. "But humans are selfish, always taking, always destroying." Her voice cracked with bitterness, and her claws dug deeper into the stone. The human took a slow step forward. Keeping his hands visible, "I have nothing to take," he said. "No army, no weapon, only food and water. If I wished to harm you, I would already be dead." Her eyes narrowed again, searching his face for lies. At last, she leaped down, landing lightly in front of him, though her leg shook at the impact. She stepped closer until he felt the edge of her claw brushing his chest. "Very well," she whispered, her breath warm but sharp as knives. "You will serve me until I no longer need you." Her golden eyes gleamed as she spoke the words. "Slowly, you will carry food, you will carry water, you will obey. And when I am strong again, I will decide if you live or die." The human nodded once, not challenging her, not submitting fully. It was a balance, a dangerous one. "I agree," he said calmly. "I will help, I will obey, but I will not betray." Her ears flicked again at the strange choice of words. She almost seemed disappointed that he did not plead for his life. Instead, he stood like a man who had already accepted his fate. It made her pause longer than she wished. That night, they rested within the ruins. She kept her back to the wall, her claws always near. He made a small fire with broken wood, careful not to light it too high. She watched him from the shadows, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. When he offered her water, she refused at first, hissing that she needed nothing from him. But an hour later, when her throat grew dry, she snatched the flask from his hands without a word. Her pride burned, but her body needed what only he carried. He lay down on the cold stone floor, but he did not close his eyes fully. He could feel her gaze on him, sharp as knives in the dark. He wondered if she would slit his throat while he slept, but the longer he listened, the more he heard her breathing grow uneven. She was tired, far more than she let him see. The growls faded, the threats softened, until at last she leaned her head back against the wall, silent. The human did not move. He simply waited. He knew this was not trust, not yet. It was survival, hers and his, tied together by chance and danger. But in her silence, he sensed something deeper. A loneliness she carried heavier than her wounds. A loneliness that no claws could protect her from. He whispered quietly into the night, not sure if she even listened. "You don't have to fight me, princess," he said softly. "Just let me walk beside you." Her ears twitched. Though her eyes stayed closed, for a moment he thought she would strike again. But instead she whispered so faintly he almost missed it. "If you betray me, I'll kill you first." Then she turned away, curling her tail around her body. The human breathed slowly, letting the fire fade. He knew this bargain was dangerous. Maybe impossible, but it was the only path that kept them both alive. And as he closed his eyes, he realized something chilling. She had given him a chance, but not because she trusted him. She had given him a chance because deep inside, she feared being alone. The morning air was cold, carrying the smell of damp earth and old ruins. The human rose slowly from the stone floor, stretching his stiff limbs across the fire pit. The alien cat princess was already awake, perched on the wall like a sentinel. Her golden eyes glowed in the rising light, and her ears twitched at every sound. She looked like a predator ready to strike, even though her bandaged arm trembled slightly. "Get up faster, human," she said sharply, her tail flicking behind her. "You waste time with every breath." The human gave a tired smile, but said nothing, gathering his pack and checking the little food he had left. The princess dropped down with her usual feline grace, landing silently in front of him. "Today we travel farther," she commanded, her voice firm. "You will keep pace, and if you fall behind, I leave you." The human nodded. Knowing she meant every word, he followed as she strode ahead, her cloak brushing against her fur. Her posture regal, even in exile. She never looked back to see if he kept up, but her ears twitched whenever he stepped too far away. It was her way of keeping control without admitting she relied on his presence. She wanted him close enough to use, but far enough to remind herself he was not her friend. Hours passed, and the path twisted through broken lands where vines covered shattered statues. Sometimes the ruins whispered of battles long ago. Scratched with marks of blades and claws, the human could almost feel the weight of history pressing down on them. But what pressed heavier was a silence between him and the princess. It was a silence filled with tension, like two swords drawn but never clashing. At noon they reached a stream. The princess crouched to drink, but hissed when her wounded arm brushed the water. Without a word, the human stepped forward and offered her a clean cloth from his pack. Her eyes flared with anger, her claws snapping close to his hand. "Do not think me weak," she growled, her tail lashing. "I only thought you might want to heal faster," he replied calmly, for a moment. Her golden eyes searched his face, then with a sharp breath, she snatched the cloth. She turned away, muttering under her breath, but he caught the faintest words. "Stupid human." They moved on, but the air felt different. The princess still insulted him, still threatened him. But there was hesitation now. Every time he offered help, she refused at first, then quietly accepted later. It was like watching a wall crack piece by piece. Though the core still held strong, by evening, they reached an abandoned watchtower at the edge of the valley. The stone was broken, the top half collapsed. But it offered shelter. The princess leaped onto the higher stones, scanning the horizon. With sharp eyes, the human gathered sticks and started another small fire. When he looked up, he saw her staring not at him but at the flames. Her face was calm for once, almost sad, though she quickly masked it when she saw his gaze. "Why? Are you really here, princess?" he asked quietly. The question hung heavy in the air. Her claws flexed, her ears flattened, but she did not strike him. Instead, she sat down on the stone. Curling her tail around herself, "My people hunt me," she said at last, her voice low and sharp. "They call me traitor. But I only refuse to bow to a monster." The human leaned closer, listening. Her words carried the weight of pain hidden behind pride. She told him of the warlord who demanded her as a bride, the council who betrayed her when she refused. She told him of her escape, the endless chase, the bounty placed on her head. "I swore to kill any human I met," she whispered bitterly. "But you confuse me?" The fire cracked softly between them. The human did not answer at once. He only watched her golden eyes in the dim glow. "I don't want to confuse you," he said gently. "I only want to walk beside you until you are safe." Her ears twitched, and for the first time her claws slowly retracted. Still, her pride forced her to add, "If you betray me, I will tear out your throat." But her voice lacked the same sharpness as before. That night, as the wind howled outside the ruins, the princess lay with her back against the wall. The human rested near the fire, pretending to sleep. He heard her breathing change, soft and uneven, almost like a child hiding sorrow. For a long time, she said nothing, until at last her voice broke the silence. "I have not trusted anyone for years," she whispered. He opened his eyes, but did not speak, letting her words hang in the night. She turned her face away quickly, ashamed of her own admission. "Forget I said that, human," she snapped. Though her voice trembled, the human closed his eyes again. He did not forget. He could not. He knew then that beneath the claws and threats, there was a soul who carried wounds deeper than her flesh. And as he drifted into sleep, he realized something. Their alliance was reluctant, fragile, and dangerous. But it was no longer only about survival. It was the beginning of something neither of them could understand yet. The night stretched long inside the broken watchtower. The human woke early, the fire now only glowing embers. The princess was still there, sitting with her knees drawn up and her tail curled tight. She had not slept much, her golden eyes heavy but still alert. When he stirred, she looked away quickly, pretending she had not been watching him. "Get ready," she ordered. Though her voice carried less sharpness than before, the human packed his things silently, noticing how she held her arm close to her chest. The wound was worse now, the bandage stained red again. She tried to hide it, but he saw the way her steps faltered when they began to walk. Every time she stumbled, her pride forced her to snap at him. "I do not need your help, human," she hissed. But still she leaned against the wall when she thought he wasn't looking. By midday, they reached a stretch of broken plains. The land was scarred with old battle marks, blackened stone and shattered weapons buried under dust. The princess slowed, her eyes scanning the ruins. She walked softer, her ears flat, as if the place carried memories she wanted to forget. Finally, she stopped in front of a half-buried statue, its head broken, its body scorched. Her golden eyes softened in a way he had never seen before. "This was my mother's place," she whispered, her voice almost trembling. The human blinked in surprise, not expecting her to speak so openly. "She was queen before me. Strong and fierce," the princess said, her claws brushing over the cracked stone. "She ruled with honor, but when she died, the council gave power to men who only cared for war." Her voice shook with anger now, the tip of her tail lashing. "They wanted me to obey, to become a tool, to be given to the warlord. Like property. The human stood quietly, letting her speak. Her claws scraped against the stone until sparks flew. I refused. I would rather be hunted. Hated, even killed, than bow to him, she growled. That is why they call me traitor. Why they chase me, why I swore to kill humans. She turned to him suddenly, her eyes burning, because humans trade, humans sell. Humans buy lives like they are nothing. The human's chest tightened. But he did not step back. Instead, he met her gaze and said softly, "Not all humans are the same." Her ears flicked, her claws tightened, but she did not strike. Instead, she stared at him, as if trying to read his soul. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind carrying dust across the plains. "Why do you listen?" she asked suddenly, her voice breaking. No one listened before. Not my council, not my guards, not even my kin. Her golden eyes shimmered with something almost like pain. The human's answer was simple. "Because you deserve to be heard," he said. Her breath caught, her tail stilled. And for the first time her face softened, but quickly she looked away. Curling her arms around herself, "Do not say such things," she muttered. "Words mean nothing." They continued walking, the silence heavier now, but it was not the silence of anger. It was the silence of wounds being revealed. The human noticed she no longer called him only human when she spoke next. She used his name, low and uncertain. It startled him, but it also meant something was changing. That evening, they found shelter beneath a jagged cliff. The human built a fire again, while the princess sat nearby, staring into the flames. Her claws rested loosely on her knees. No longer raised against him, after a long silence, she spoke. "My mother once told me, a leader must know who to trust," she whispered. "I thought trust was weakness, but now—" Her voice faded, her ears folding back. The human waited, but she said no more. Curling her tail tighter around herself, later that night, as they rested, the distant sound of movement stirred the air. The princess tensed, her ears rising, her claws sliding out with a sharp hiss. The human reached for his blade, his heart quickening. From the shadows beyond the cliff, shapes moved, hunters, armed and swift. The princess's golden eyes burned with fury. "They found me," she whispered, her voice shaking with rage and fear. "They will not stop until I am dead." The human stepped closer, ready to defend, but before the battle came, she turned her gaze to him. Her voice was low, almost trembling. "If I fall tonight, remember me not as a princess, but as someone who chose her own path." Her words struck deeper than any threat she had given before. The human clenched his blade tighter, his answer steady, "You will not fall tonight." "Not while I stand." The hunters drew nearer, their voices echoing through the dark. The firelight flickered against the cliff walls, casting long shadows. The princess stood tall, her crown symbol glimmering faintly in the fire. The human stood beside her, ready. Their alliance was reluctant, fragile, but in that moment, it was real. Secrets had been revealed, trust had begun to grow, and as the hunters closed in, both of them knew their fates were now bound together. The night shook with the sound of approaching hunters. The human gripped his blade, his heart beating like a drum in his chest. The princess stood beside him, her claws unsheathed, her tail stiff with rage. Her golden eyes burned in the firelight. As she listened to the footsteps closing in, "They are many," she whispered, her voice low but sharp. "They come for me, and they will kill you for standing near." The human gave her a quick look, his grip tightening on the blade. "Then they will have to go through both of us," he said. She blinked in surprise, her ears flicking back. It was not what she expected from a human who owed her nothing. Us. The first shadow leaped from the darkness, a hunter armed with jagged steel. The princess moved faster than lightning, slashing him down before his strike could land. The human stepped in, blocking another attacker's blade. His arms shaking with the force, more poured in, their eyes gleaming, their weapons raised. The clash of steel and claws echoed through the valley. The fire cracked and sparks shot upward as if the earth itself was alive. "Run, human!" The princess shouted, pushing him aside as two hunters charged. But instead of fleeing, he fought back, his blade cutting one down. Her eyes widened again at his choice. Humans, to her, were weak, selfish, always choosing their own skin over others, yet this one stayed, even when death loomed all around. The battle was chaos. A storm of steel and fury. The princess was everywhere at once, claws flashing, tail lashing. The human did his best, not as fast as her. Not as strong, but steady. He fought not for glory, but simply to survive beside her. That truth reached her heart more than any words he had spoken. But the hunters were too many. A strike cut across the human's shoulder, sending him stumbling. "Back!" the princess hissed, rage surging through her chest without thinking. She leaped between him and the next blade. Her claws tore the attacker apart, but blood streaked across her own fur. The human stared in shock. She had saved him. They staggered back toward the cliff wall, the enemy pressing closer. The princess panted, her arm bleeding heavily, her golden eyes blazing with fire. "You are a fool," she snarled at him, though her voice trembled. "Why not run? Why stay and die?" The human met her eyes, his breath rough. "Because you are not alone," he said firmly. For a heartbeat, everything slowed, the battle fading into silence in her mind. Those words struck deeper than any blade. Her ears twitched, her claws shook, but in her chest, something long frozen began to crack. A horn sounded in the distance, more hunters arriving. The princess gritted her teeth. Pulling him by the arm, "We cannot win, not tonight," she hissed. Her strength was fading. Yet her will remained fierce. She dragged him into the shadows. Through a narrow path between rocks, the hunters chased, shouting and snarling. But the night covered their escape. They ran across jagged ground, their breaths heavy. The human stumbled from blood loss. But the princess caught his arm, steadying him. Her claws that once threatened him now kept him upright. She snarled in frustration, half at him, half at herself. "You slow me down, human." "And yet I cannot leave you," she growled, her tail lashed angrily. But her grip on his arm tightened instead of letting go. At last they reached an old ravine, its bridge broken, only ropes swinging in the wind. The princess looked back. Hunters. Closing fast. "We jump," she said, her voice hard. The human's eyes widened. The fall was deadly, but there was no choice. Together they leaped, landing on the opposite side with a crash. Pain shot through his legs, but they lived. The hunters, cursed from the far side, unable to follow without risking their lives. For the first time that night, silence returned. The princess fell to her knees, breathing hard. Her fur matted with blood. The human sat beside her, clutching his wounded arm. The fire of battle faded, leaving only the heavy sound of survival. He turned to her slowly, his voice quiet but steady. "You saved me," he said, almost in disbelief. Her golden eyes flicked toward him, wide and uncertain. For a moment, she looked like the fierce princess again, but then her ears lowered, and her voice came soft. "Do not speak of it," she whispered. "I acted without thought." He gave a weak smile, shaking his head. "No, you acted because you cared." Her tail twitched, her claws flexed, but she did not deny it. Instead, she turned away, whispering so softly he almost missed it. "I don't understand you, human." And I don't understand myself. That night, as they hid in the dark of the ravine, the truth settled between them. The princess who once threatened to kill him had chosen instead to protect him. The human who could have abandoned her had chosen Instead, to fight at her side, in their hearts, they both felt the same frightening truth. This was no longer about survival. This was about trust being born where it should never have existed, and neither of them knew where it would lead. The night gave them little rest. The human's arm burned with pain, and the princess's wounds bled through the cloth again. Yet at dawn they pressed forward, moving deeper into the ravine. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by their footsteps and the sound of her claws scraping stone. By midday, they found themselves trapped. The ravine narrowed into a dead end, its walls rising high and sharp. Behind them came the sound of hunters' shouts, footsteps, steel clashing against rock. The princess stopped, her golden eyes narrowing. As her ears flicked back, "They have followed us," she whispered. Her tail lashing in anger, her claws slid out with a sharp hiss, ready for battle. The human looked up at the walls, too steep to climb. He tightened his grip on his blade. Knowing there was no escape this time, "We fight," he said simply. The princess turned to him. Quesada turned, unreadable. "You are not my soldier, human," she hissed. "You are not bound to me." Her tail whipped again as she snarled. "You can still run and hide," but the human shook his head, steady and calm. "I told you before, I will not leave you," he said. Her golden eyes widened for a moment, her breath catching, then a strange fire flickered within them. "You are a fool," she whispered, but softer than before, "a stubborn, reckless fool." The hunters poured into the ravine, their weapons gleaming, their eyes fixed on the princess. One shouted, "The traitor dies tonight." Another added, "And the human too." The human raised his blade, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. The princess crouched low, her claws flashing, her ears flat. Together, they faced the storm. The first wave charged, the human blocked one strike. Barely holding against the force, the princess slashed another down, her movements fast and graceful, even with her limp. Back to back they fought, their breaths heavy, their strength pushed to the edge. Every time the human stumbled, she covered him. Every time she faltered, he stepped in. It was no longer a bargain of survival, it was trust, forged in fire. Blood sprayed across the stone. Sparks flew as steel clashed. The hunter snarled with fury, but the pair would not break. The human's arms ached, yet he kept fighting. His blade steady, the princess hissed and roared, her claws tearing through armor, her eyes blazing like fire. In that moment, they were not enemies, not predator and prey. They were allies, bound by something neither could deny. One hunter lunged at the human, his weapon raised high. The princess leaped without thought, slamming her body into the attack. The blade cut across her side, and she gasped in pain. But she stood firm, shielding him with her own body. "Don't die, human," she growled through clenched teeth. Her blood dripped onto the stone, but her eyes burned brighter than ever. The human's chest tightened, rage and fear surging through him. He struck down the attacker with a roar, his blade slicing clean. Then he turned, catching her before she fell. "You're bleeding too much," he said, his voice breaking. She leaned against him, panting, claws still wet with blood. "Told you before," she whispered. "If you betray me, I'll kill you." But her claws rested against his chest, not his throat, and her head pressed weakly against his shoulder. More hunters closed in. Surrounding them, the human stood taller, his blade raised. The princess lifted her claws again, swaying but refusing to fall. They were outnumbered, cornered, and nearly broken, but they fought with a strength that was not their own, it was each other's. Hours seemed to pass in the chaos, until at last the hunters retreated. Their leader snarled, vowing to return, and the survivors fled into the night. Silence filled the ravine once more, broken only by ragged breaths. The human lowered his blade, his body shaking. The princess collapsed to her knees. Her fur soaked with blood, he caught her quickly, steadying her before she could fall fully. "You're safe now," he whispered. Her golden eyes flickered open. Staring at him, for a moment she looked at him not as an enemy, not even as a servant, but as something else, someone she could lean on. Her claws curled weakly into his sleeve. "Why?" she whispered. "Why fight for me when you owe me nothing?" The human's answer came soft but certain, because no one deserves to stand alone. Her breath caught, her ears lowered, and for the first time her fierce mask cracked. She did not threaten him. She did not insult him. She only let her head rest against his shoulder, silent and trembling. The fire of trust had been forged in battle, and neither of them could deny it anymore. That night, as the stars spread above the ravine, the human kept watch while she slept at his side. Her claws no longer rested at his throat, but curled softly against his arm. She had once sworn to kill him, but now she had shielded him with her own body, and as he looked at her sleeping form, he knew their story had only just begun. The night after the battle was quiet. Almost too quiet. The human sat awake, his blade across his lap, his eyes scanning the stars above, beside him. The princess slept, her fur stained with blood, her breathing uneven but steady, for the first time since they met. Her claws were not raised against him. Instead, they curled lightly into the fabric of his sleeve, as if she feared he might leave. He watched her in silence, remembering the first moment they met, her claws at his throat, her golden eyes filled with fury, her voice promising his death. Now those same eyes were closed, softened by exhaustion, her body leaning into his for warmth. It was hard to believe she was the same princess who once swore to kill him, and yet here she was, asleep. At his side at dawn, she stirred, her ears twitching, her golden eyes blinking open. For a moment, she looked confused, as if surprised to find herself still alive. Then she saw him watching her, and quickly she straightened, her pride returning. "You still breathe," she muttered, her voice rough. "Lucky for you." The human gave a small smile, shaking his head. "Or lucky for both of us," he replied. She frowned, but the words made her ears flick. He offered her water, and this time she took it without protest. Her claws brushed against his hand when she grabbed the flask, but she didn't pull away. Something had shifted between them, something that could not be undone. They walked slowly through the ravine, the human supporting her when she stumbled. At first, she hissed at him to let go, but each time her steps faltered, she leaned back into his arm. Her pride fought her need, but her heart no longer denied it. Every time she looked at him, her eyes lingered longer, not with hatred, but with something softer. By midday, they found shelter in a cave overlooking the valley. The human gathered wood and lit a small fire, the smoke curling gently into the air. The princess sat across from him, her golden eyes glowing in the firelight. She was silent for a long time before she finally spoke. "I threatened to kill you," she said, her voice low. "I meant it, every word, every claw. I wanted to see you bleed." The human stayed quiet, waiting. She curled her tail around herself, her ears flattening slightly. "But you never raised your weapon against me, not once, not even when I was weak." She continued, "You gave me water. You carried me. You fought for me, when you could have run." Her eyes glistened in the firelight, her claws tapping nervously against stone. "I don't understand you, human. I don't understand why you stayed." He looked at her calmly, his voice soft but steady. "Because you are more than their traitor, more than their hunter, more than their princess," he said. "You are someone worth standing beside." Her breath caught, her golden eyes widening, her claws freezing mid-tap. For once, she had no words, no threats, only silence. That night, as the fire burned low, the princess shifted closer. She did not threaten him, did not bare her claws. Instead, she sat down beside him, her shoulder brushing his. Her tail curled lightly around both of them, not in dominance, but in quiet protection. When she spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. "You are the first I have trusted since my mother." The human looked at her, surprised, her golden eyes met his, and though they still burned with pride, they also carried something else. Something fragile. Something real. "I do not know what happens next," she admitted. "But tonight, I will rest here." She leaned gently against him, her head brushing his shoulder. Her claws retracted, her body finally at ease. The human's heart beat steady, his eyes drifting to the stars beyond the cave. He thought of all the paths that led here, her threats, her anger, her pain, and how they had turned into this moment of quiet trust. He let out a slow breath, whispering, "You once swore to kill me." She gave the faintest smile, her voice soft as sleep pulled her under. "Perhaps I was wrong." Her breathing slowed, her body warm against his side. The princess, who had once been his would-be executioner, now slept peacefully beside him. Her claws no longer weapons, but a gentle weight curled against his arm. The human closed his eyes, knowing tomorrow the world would still hunt them. But tonight, in this fragile silence, they had found something stronger than fear. They had found trust, and as the fire faded into embers, he thought of the irony. The alien cat princess who once threatened his life now chose to sleep in his shadow, and for the first time in many nights, both of them dreamed without fear.